Hi everyone, and welcome back for another super duper fantastic, amazing episode of Real Deal Meetup on Periscope TV. Once again, it's your girl Queen, and I am here today at the amazing, super fantastic Brian Gormley's office. I'm a bit silent because I'm actually inside of the hallway right now. Hello, De La Cruz, how are you? I'm in the hallway right now, so I'm a bit silent, but I just wanted to go ahead, see who's on the line before I go inside the office. So I see De La Cruz is on. I saw a couple of other people. Zaffer is on. Thank you guys so much. So for those of you who don't know, this is Real Deal Meetup on Periscope TV. My name is Queen. I'm your host for this super duper fantastic, amazing episode. As usual, every Thursday we're here live, 12 p.m., giving you different tips on how you can invest in real estate. So Real Deal Meetup, we're the third largest real estate meetup in the nation. So that's nationwide, third largest. So we have a very, very big network. So if you guys have not been, hello Teresa, if you guys have not been on, make sure you go on therealdealmeetup.com and you can get more details about us. So also, I don't know who's going on the cruise, but the cruise, and thank you guys so much, keep on hearting it up. The cruise, we're like a week away. So for all of you who are going on the cruise, you guys are the real MVPs of 2017 because it's going to be an amazing, amazing, amazing time. So I'm really excited about that. So guys, for today, thank you so much, V-Stern. Okay, so guys, for today, when we go inside, we're going to be talking about the secret sauce on how to flip REOs with bank trusts. No. Let's go back. How to flip bank REOs using land trusts. Thank you. And our amazing guest for today is Brian Gormley of Cornerstone Property. So he's going to be giving all the rundown. So if it's anybody who's on the line who wants to know about this topic, now is the time to ask questions. I mean, you can contact Brian offline as well, but guys, definitely get your pens and pads and all that you need ready so that you can write down all this amazing information. Also, please keep on hearting it up. I love when you guys heart it up. That makes me feel as though I'm doing something good. So I'm gonna walk inside now. I still feel like I'm kind of creeping around, so I'm gonna walk inside now to get started with Brian. And make sure that when you're asking questions that you ask the questions while I'm going ahead and speaking so that I can make sure and present it to Brian for you all. So without further ado, I have Mr. Gormley coming here now. Hello, how are you? Doing great. Thank you so much for doing the interview with us again.
Of course, my pleasure.
Yeah, sure thing. So I kind of got everybody excited as much as I could in the quiet hallway outside, but
Not so quiet, I don't think.
Okay. So everybody is like ready and pumped up to learn more about the secret sauce on how to flip houses using trust. But before that, just so that they have a feel for, why you're even an expert in this area, how did you get started in real estate?
Well, I went to law school and policy school, and I started doing affordable housing work actually. So,
Okay.
Working for Freddie Mac and a lot of the big investment company banks on Wall Street, and then I jumped over to affordable housing on the primary market with tax-exempt bonds and low-income housing tax credits.
Okay.
So when you work with big boys like that, then you get pretty used to more sophisticated techniques and stuff that you feel like you've got to explain to residential realtors are just taken as granted on the commercial end of the spectrum. So it's kind of nice being able to get past that initial hurdle, right, and then implement some of the techniques that are very effective and very legitimate in a residential context as well.
That's so cool. So you had that upper advantage from you having that background, and then you pretty much took it into the residential realm or with your firm. Okay.
Absolutely.
Nice. All right. So now I know you specialize in like a couple of things. I just realized there are quite a few things, but we're going to speak on one in particular, but still just so they have a feel of, again, for, like all the expertise that you have. What are your specialty areas right now in real estate?
Okay, so I do a lot of different things in real estate. Title company, I'm a real estate broker, I'm an attorney, and an investor. So I do wholesales and rehabs myself.
Okay.
And in addition to, on the attorney side, we do trust estates probate, as well as TOPA down in DC.
Okay.
And then just sort of a general kind of real estate, I'll call it litigation light practice. I'm not really a litigator, but people end up calling me and we go and handle, whatever.
Right.
Landlord-tenant things or
Okay.
transactional sort of things, contract review, whatever. So
Okay.
there's a whole kind of spectrum. Anything in real estate is pretty fair game, and then we do some of the trust and estates and probate stuff as well. And so forth.
Okay, cool. So we're not gonna breeze over that. That's kind of the purpose of this interview. So let's get back into trust. Now, trust for me, and I know for a lot of other people, and guys, double tap on the screen if this is you, don't be embarrassed. But every time somebody explains a trust to me, I hear wah 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 wah. Like I never get a full understanding. So can you please explain to us what a trust even is?
Okay, so a trust is an arrangement. It's not an entity,
Okay.
but it's an arrangement whereby one person or entity holds property, and that could be personal property, like a car, refrigerator, money, or real property, for the benefit of somebody else.
Okay.
So, if you think about a title company, it's pretty easy application. The title company at a traditional closing will hold in trust the buyer's money. When the lender wires the money in, they're not wiring it directly to the seller, they're wiring it to the title company. The title company is holding it in trust pursuant to specific instructions that they get from the lender. Okay, so that's just a very easy example that hopefully helps you understand. Trust can be formed all different kinds of ways, grantor trust, irrevocable trust. There are different purposes, so there's a lot of different reasons why you might want to form a trust,
Right.
and therefore that will dictate how the trust is structured.
Gotcha.
As well. But just the idea is someone is helping someone else out and holding something of value for another person.
Gotcha. Okay. And I just want to thank you because that was like the most simplistic version of what a trust is. And every time I get an explanation, I feel like it came straight from out of Webster's dictionary and it doesn't make any sense to me. But cool, thanks. And I think everybody on the line appreciated it because I'm getting all these hearts. And also, I saw that Hashville Queen, Sharona joined on, a couple of other people. Thank you guys so much. Oh, share this on Twitter, guys. Share this on Twitter. Share the wealth. Okay, cool. So now that we know what a trust is, REOs, buzzword, but I don't think people even understand what the acronym means. So can you explain to us as well what an REO even is?
So that's real estate owned is the acronym, and basically it just means if typically it's a lender will foreclose on a property. Okay, so they'll take back a property when someone's defaulted through foreclosure, or it could be a deed in lieu of foreclosure. But in any event, they're taking property back instead of getting the money that they are entitled to under a promissory note. So now they've got this big inventory because they've had to foreclose on millions and millions of people, and so they're holding this fairly large inventory that they're releasing kind of over time periodically, so they're not flooding the market with product.
Right. Okay. Cool. That's perfect. So now when I see bank REO, now I know that means it's specifically for the bank, but there can be other REOs, is what you're saying. It's just real estate owned.
Real estate owned. So it doesn't have to be a commercial bank like Bank of America or Citigroup or SunTrust.
Gotcha.
It can be, and typically is, HUD, VA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac.
Okay.
Any of these, if you Queen lent some money to someone and they didn't pay you back, and you took a deed of trust as collateral, you too could have REO property. In other words, you could have foreclosed on that borrower, and then you get the property.
Okay, cool. Okay, glad I know. I actually have a note so I could have my own REOs. All right, now, how much REO? Because you said the bank didn't want to have like millions of properties just flooding in the market. So like, what would be your estimate in terms of how many properties are actually still available?
I don't know about how many, billions and billions and billions of dollars worth.
Wow.
So it's, we haven't seen this sort of huge tidal wave of product.
Okay.
It gets released over time. So the banks are aware that, if supply and demand curves, and if they flood the market with a bunch of supply and demand stays the same, that's only going to reduce the price of everything. So
gotcha. Okay.
Generally, they've tried to find creative ways to do things. For example, Fannie Mae will actually do an analysis of whether to rehab a property after they foreclose. So they'll foreclose. They will put in several tens of thousands of dollars into a property, rehab it rather than selling it to one of us as investors,
Wow.
and then go try to sell it to a retail buyer.
Interesting. I always wondered why the bank didn't just go ahead and like renovate all these properties, but now you're saying they do an analysis. So
Yeah, I mean, every property is different, right? So
Right.
I generally classify properties into sort of three categories. It's more of a continuum than a hard and fast set or pool. But if you have turnkey properties that are ready to sell for a retail buyer, that's one class, right? The sort of the lowest class, if you will, is just the investor buyer. In other words, the ceiling's falling down, major mold, whatever.
Right.
Retail buyers are not going to be interested in those properties. And then I have this third class I call middle of the road properties, and those are tough properties to sell, right?
Middle
Whether
of
on
the
a,
road.
whether you got equity and you're a private seller or you're a bank, do you make the analysis and say, let me put in 20 grand, 40 grand, 60 grand into this property when the return may not justify it.
Gotcha.
So you may be able to sell it faster, but you may not recoup the time, risk, and money that you've actually put into it. So that's
Gotcha.
sort of the analysis that they're gonna put in.
Okay. All right. Cool. So now that I'm thinking, because I had no idea. Like, this is totally off topic, guys. If you have any questions about this, as many as I do, because it's now kind of like racing in my head. So if a bank will be okay with renovating a property now, should we try to target the properties before the bank even forecloses on them? Or is that even legal? Like, what's the best method to get better deals since the bank is now renovating?
Okay, so let me clarify. First of all banks don't renovate.
Okay.
Fannie Mae will not necessarily renovate every property, even every investor property.
Okay.
It's up to them to decide, and their asset managers. They might look at trends in the market in that particular sub-market. They might look at how much money they got to put in, what the return is, and so on. So there's no guarantee that any particular lender is going to do that.
Gotcha.
HUD, I don't think does. VA doesn't. So it really just sort of depends on the unique circumstances.
Okay.
In terms of your question about targeting properties, I still think you can get okay deals in foreclosures. A lot of times, as we all know, when a real estate agent gets their hands on a deal, they tend to overprice it, and so you lose a lot. And they're going to test the waters too. I mean, why just throw something away? So. And finally, the last point I make on that is that REOs tend to be picked over because at this point in the market cycle, no one listening on this call has been the first to get into the REO game. It's almost kind of old hat at this point.
Right.
So yes, you can still get okay deals, especially if you're a cash buyer, not a private money, hard money lender type buyer, because your cost of funds is going to drive up your overall project costs and really kind of skim you on your profits, but it's still possible.
Okay.
I think other ways are generally preferable, and they all are going to require sweat and equity and hustle.
Okay.
So, and of course we all know there's many different ways of identifying motivated sellers.
Right. Okay. Cool. So sweat equity and hustle, guys. So we're gonna those are the secret sauces to this equation. All right. Now, so I'm thinking, is there still a chance with REOs? And then if so, how do we go ahead and profit from off of them? Especially some of the wholesalers that are on the line who like to assign their contracts or do double closings. Well, let's back up. Why can't you assign a REO just so that everybody that's on the line knows why this technique is like so important that we're going to talk about?
So banks are going to be greedy. They are
Okay.
a for-profit entity.
Okay.
All right, just like the wholesalers on the line as well. So they hate wholesalers. This is a newsflash for some, but banks do not like investors.
Okay.
And so they have gone to great lengths, both in the REO market as well as in the short sale market, to stifle any kind of investor making money on the deal.
Wow.
They want to sell to retail buyers. They don't want to deal with investors. It's fine if an investor comes along,
Right.
but they're wary. They're very wary of double closings, wholesale assignments, that sort of thing.
Wow.
So their posture is going to be to adopt policies that prevent that from happening.
Okay.
The general rule of thumb is they think that they should be getting all of the money on a property. No one else should be benefiting from a transaction.
Right.
Okay, so they carry sort of their heavy scepter of bank fraud and threaten that. They have, in the short sale context, very thorny approval letters. that prohibit double closings, either for typically for a period of time, 30, 60, or 90 days, or restrict the resale value.
Okay.
They've gone, they've continued to impose these sort of FHA resale guidelines on the back end of a flip transaction too. So there are a number of things. One other thing I would note is deed restrictions. So in a deed, okay, think about it like this. If I'm the seller of a property and I put a restriction in the deed to you as the buyer, and I say you can't sell this property for 30 days.
Okay.
You can't sell the property for 30 days because the title company is going to look at the public record, which includes that deed, in other words, how you got to own the property, and see that, oh, wait a second, it's not been 30 days.
Right.
So that kills the double closing.
Okay.
Now, not all REO banks do this. HUD, for instance, does not.
Okay.
But Freddie and Fannie typically would.
They do. Okay. All right. Okay. Gotcha. So for the double closings with REOs, that's a no-go because I feel as though they figured out like a lot of tricks that investors
some of them do, some of them don't, is the answer to your question. And I think you should go into it thinking that approach is not going to work on an REO property.
Okay. Well, there's good news, guys. Don't be sad. I don't know if anybody on the line is sad. Don't be sad because there is still good news. We have another strategy that Brian is going to go into. So now, if those strategies don't work, what strategy has been working for you?
So it kind of depends on the type of product if it's a HUD property versus something else. But land trusts are a great strategy, and it's similar to this buying the LLC. So think of a land trust, notwithstanding what I said earlier in the conversation about it not being an entity. Think of a land trust just the same way as an LLC. Okay. Think of it as an entity, even though it's not. Think about it like that. Okay, so the land trust would buy the property, and this is not the technical explanation, this is the layman's explanation. Okay. Okay? The LLC or the land trust buys the property, and you sell as the investor the beneficial interest in the trust or the LLC. Okay. This is a sort of a tried and true way of doing things, a way of getting around the deed restrictions, way of getting around the lack of ability to assign your contract. I mean, that's overt. The assignment is overt. They would never approve that. Okay. And they would never approve if you were flipping it. If they knew that you were flipping it, they would never agree to sell to you either.
Oh. Okay.
Right. So if you disclose that, and for example, in the short sale world, they say you have to disclose all contracts that you have with anybody else, and if the title company knows about any other contract, then they have to disclose it and get our permission. Of course, if you disclose it, you're not going to get their permission.
Right.
So,
right.
So it's sort of a non-starter. So the HUD, the way that the HUD works is you get your wholesale fee on the buyer's side, so it doesn't even impact the seller side at all.
Oh. Okay.
So the seller doesn't really even know what's happening. You have to be able to use your title company, because if you use their title company, which is what they want you to do, that obviously their title company is their agent. They're going to immediately tell them what's going on, and it'll kill the deal. Right. So what you do is you just you assign the beneficial interest in the LLC or the land trust. Okay. And you're off and running.
Wow.
Okay. A couple benefits of a land trust over an LLC. Number one, there's no registration. So you don't have to pay the $400 or whatever to SSTAT to register your LLC. Okay. And it's very flexible as well. You can literally set it up at the table. Wow. A lot of objections that you hear from buyers is, well, wait a second, I don't want to buy this LLC because I don't know what liabilities and debts attach.
Yes, hear that a lot.
I could be inheriting, what you've got to be comfortable and indemnify me, and on and on and on. Mm-hmm. And there's only so much you can say. Say, well, I just formed this LLC. It couldn't possibly have anything attached to it. Well, unless I don't know what you've done in the last couple of weeks. And generally, you've got to front that money. And you don't know if in order to get your deal approved, and you don't know if it's going to get approved. Right. So you might just be out the $400 or whatever it is to expedite LLC docs because they want to see the LLC docs and that you're an authorized signer. Right. So that's the challenge with LLCs. Now that said, it's a little easier to get lenders, particularly hard money lenders, sign off on selling an LLC interest than it is a land trust. Okay. People around here are a little less savvy. Less exposed to this approach.
most definitely.
If you hear about Massachusetts Business Trust, they're very familiar up there. And I've had lenders who are based in Massachusetts who are just like, okay, yeah, no problem. This is totally cool. We're very familiar with this.
Gotcha.
No problem. We can handle it. No big deal.
Okay.
Other lenders, and particularly it's their attorneys. Like the lender doesn't really care.
Okay.
It's the attorney that puts the kibosh on it because they say, well, we're not familiar with this. This is too much.
Right.
And they don't want to look stupid for not knowing what they're doing, and so they just say, this doesn't work.
Okay, gotcha.
So if you have a cash buyer, it works a lot better than if you have a hard money lender on the back end. Otherwise, you've got to explain it and hope that they understand, and you can walk them through it.
Right.
We've been able to do that, but not in every case, and so it's very dependent on the deal.
Yeah, I totally agree. We had that happen to us not too long ago. If it goes over somebody's head, they don't necessarily want to look bad, so they're just like, it doesn't work. It's not real. Right. Real estate doesn't work. That's what they say. Okay, so now if we have the REO under contract, we find a good deal on the MLS, HUD property, Fannie Mae, or one of those other big dogs. So we find one, place it under contract. What would be like our next step? Do we create the trust before we place it under contract? After we place it under contract? How do we?
Yeah, you would really form the trust either at the closing table or if the end buyer wanted to see a copy of the trust or their lender.
Oh, okay.
So at that point you can say, well, we can give you a template, but it's your trust that you're inheriting, so feel free to create it. And that gives you comfort, end buyer, that nothing has happened with respect to this trust because in effect you're forming it.
Gotcha.
In effect.
So you're forming it at the closing table, like literally when you're closing to go and pick up your
check.
Wow. Okay. So I don't know if you guys understood Dice King. I saw you just joined. I don't know if you understood what you just said. So because for LLC assignments, you have to go there to SDAT, a couple of weeks ahead of time, just so that the real estate agent knows that you're not, malarkey or whatever, and then bring those documents. But you're doing the trust at the closing table. So how long does it even take to form a trust if you're doing it at the closing table?
How long does it take you to sign your name?
Like typically 2 seconds.
There you go.
Wow. Okay. So will we go this is crazy. So would we come to you in order to create it? If they're not in the state of Maryland, I know guys, some of you are not in Maryland. I saw somebody was from Russia. Okay, cool. If you're not in the area, then what will be their next best method of having that created for them?
Well, land trusts are actually based in common law, so they're not. They don't need a specific statutory authorization. Some states do recognize land trusts as part of their state statute. Others don't. So there is a business trust in Maryland, but there is not the common law land trust recognized in Maryland. So you just rely on common law. So you can apply this in, as far as I know, any state. Now, qualification, I'm only licensed in Maryland and the D.C., so I can only speak to those particular jurisdictions. But I'm quite familiar with the fact that that Massachusetts, Florida, Illinois, and Texas, these are very common instruments in other jurisdictions like those.
Okay, cool. So the next thing I was thinking about is you stated that you want to use your title company in order to close because you uses the bank titles company. You might as well just wash your hands and walk away from the deal. But what kind of title company do you need to use? Because every title company is definitely not the same. You guys are awesome, but I know a lot of title companies don't like to do anything on the edge.
I get calls from investors a lot, and they say, "Oh, well, we're calling around to get a title company set up, and we're relatively new in the business." And I say, "Great, what can I answer for you?" And they say, "Well, I've just talked to 3 title companies, and they won't do assignments of contracts. Are you familiar with this?" And I say, yeah, well, I'm familiar with both the assignment of contract and the fact that other title companies don't know anything about what they're doing when it comes to investors. So you need to have someone who's investor savvy and willing to work with you on the documents. They understand what you're doing, because a lot of them they don't want the risk, they don't understand it, and they just want to wash their hands of it. They sort of bought the lie that assigning a contract is somehow illegal, fraudulent, whatever, which is just completely bogus.
Yeah.
So, I teach contracts classes at some of the Board of Realtor associations around here, and part of the contracts class, we debunk this whole idea of you can't assign a contract. Look at the Board of Realtors forms. They say you can't assign a contract unless you get the consent of the other party. You don't have to have that provision in there. If it's silent or it's stricken out, or you specifically say you can assign any of those eventualities, you can assign.
Wow.
You can also assign with the consent of the other party if that's what your language says. So my point is just that it's specifically contemplated that you can assign, even in the Board of Realtors forms. So it's so just disingenuous / ignorant for people to say we don't know anything about assignments, or we can't do them, or they're illegal or bad or whatever.
Gotcha.
But you need to know that who you're dealing with and that they can do this. The assignment is really just kind of like step one when it comes to investing. What we're talking about today with assigning beneficial interests of trusts and LLCs, that's a much higher level than just a basic assignment. So if you talk to someone and they don't know what you're saying on assignments, which is a threshold matter, then they really aren't going to know anything about land trusts and LLCs, and so I would run far, far away from them as quickly as you can.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Cool. So we already know that you need a savvy title company. You need someone to put together those documents. Now, would that person putting together those documents, would that be a lawyer, or would that be the title company placing those documents
Well,
together?
hopefully it's one and the same.
Okay.
With the land trust, usually the investor is the one who puts it together.
Oh, okay.
Or their attorney. And so I do this as a part of the deal, I guess.
Okay.
For folks, and hey, look, if you're going to bring the business to us, great, we can help you with this, and it's not a big deal. So we've got the forms, you've got the land trust and the assignment, and then sometimes the lender might want something additional, some sort of estoppel certificate or whatever. So there's definitely an advantage in working with an attorney, just to be able to speak the language of all of the various parties in the transaction.
Gotcha. You're like a one-stop shop with everything. Okay, cool. So got the property under contract with the real estate agent. Go ahead, find the end buyer. Then come to the closing table, sign off on the trust. You're picking up your check. They're moving away with the property, and it's all said and done. Did I miss any steps there?
You're good to go.
Okay, good to go. All right, guys. So this is really the explanation of the process is simple, but you just need to have the key team players. So now we could do this with REOs. What other types of properties would this be beneficial for? Should you kind of stay away if it's something that could simply be done with an assignment, or is this beneficial for like all?
I actually like land trusts for a variety of different transactions.
Okay.
I like land trust if you're a buy and hold investor.
Really?
There's advantages to using land trusts for that in terms of liability, privacy, these sort of things. So the slip and fall tenant doesn't end up suing you personally, or even your LLC, and tie you up, especially since it's costless to set up.
Right.
So it's definitely an advantage for buy and hold folks.
Okay.
You can use it to flip ABC deals, so you're never on title, just the land trust is. So you're never showing your cards to potential creditors. It's a great asset protection device.
Okay.
You got to think big picture with your real estate investing. It's not just any one transaction and collecting a check.
Right.
If you're running a business and you're operating as a going concern, it's more than just one deal. You're out there for years, hopefully, and you've got to make sure that you're protected all the way through. So no one thinks they're going to get sued. No one thinks they're going to run into problems. Almost everyone does at some point.
Right.
Even if you're the nicest guy in the world and you go out of your way to make people happy, you still run into idiots out there who just see you as money bags, etc. So you've got to try to protect yourself.
Oh yeah.
So you can do it for ABC deals as well. This is the assignment of the beneficial interest sort of deals is what I call AB plus deals.
Okay.
So there's only one deed, one HUD, and one transfer of title.
Gotcha.
Okay, it's not an ABC deal where there's two closings.
Gotcha.
So you can do it for AB plus deals. You can do it for ABC deals. You can do it for buy and hold deals.
Okay.
All right. The challenge is going to be to find a lender if you're doing a buy and hold that is going to fund you in the trust. So you'll definitely need some sort of guarantee from a beneficial owner, or maybe even a personal guarantee, depending on the solvency of your LLC or other entity, S corp.
Okay.
So that's just something for you to consider. But if it works great otherwise, and then you can transfer the beneficial interest in the trust when you're done with the property, even if you hold it for 5 years or 10 years or whatever, if you find the right buyer.
This is cool. So someone, I just saw your question, Lorenzo. He asked, where can he find more information, just like to educate himself on land trust, because this is something that's like completely new for a lot of us.
I do an hour and a half or so talk on land trust.
Okay.
Usually I've done some lunch and learns. I usually do it like once every other month. And
Okay.
I did a land trust talk maybe a year and a half or so ago. It might be time for me to do another land trust talk.
Yeah,
So
I think we're there.
So stay on the wire to see if that comes up here in the next few months. I don't know that there's a lot. I mean, you can Google it. I don't know how much you're really going to find. It's really about connecting with the people who know something about them.
Right.
I might start with the Massachusetts Business Trust.
Okay.
Because that's a grantor revocable trust, and that will at least give you an outline. If you Google that, it'll probably be easier to find something.
Okay.
But otherwise, I would just connect with someone who's done land trust deals before, and and just take them to lunch and ask them a few pointed questions and say, hey, this is what I want to do. What do you think?
Taking the lunch. All right, Lorenzo. So if you want to go ahead and get more details, I am going to actually be giving Brian's information out at the end, so you can contact him directly, possibly do one of the lunch and learns, or start off with Massachusetts. I never say that right. Massachusetts Land Trust. All right, cool. So now, guys, if we don't have any other questions, I have like a couple of more that have just been buzzing in my mind thus far. We kind of stated that the range to complete this type of transaction, so the trust itself is $399, but what would be the associated cost with actually getting everything up and running to get to closing?
Well, usually I charge, and it kind of depends on what I'm being asked to do in a given transaction and how much time I've got into it. But usually I just have a flat sort of $400 to $600 type of fee for putting the stuff together, facilitating this, interacting with the lender and the end buyer and so on and so forth. So that's really just kind of an all-in encapsulated number. If you're using us for title, then just figure on just an extra charge. You might be able to pass that along to your end buyer, because after all, it's their land trust, it's their inheriting, right?
It is true.
You're educating them too, providing a benefit to them.
Right.
And maybe you split it 50-50, but it's if you're flipping a property, and keep in mind that's a much more economically efficient model than doing an ABC closing, right? Because you've got to pay double transfer taxes.
Exactly.
So you're saving money by doing the AB plus type of deal. It's wholesaling in effect.
Right.
Right. So you're never on title. You avoid any liability, potential liability, and so on. So it's a really good thing. You're saving money by doing it rather than paying just even the double transfer tax.
Right.
For instance. So it's something that's I think helpful for all parties. It helps get the deal done and saves you money at the end of the day and risk exposure.
I love it. This is awesome. I'm definitely going to be at a lunch and learn, sip and bite, whatever we're going to call it. But for those who want to, keep in contact with you, I know there are a lot of questions that were on the line, but so that you can get deeper into it, or even use Brian on an upcoming deal that you have now that you know the strategy, will be the best contact information.
Yeah, just shoot me an email. It's Brian, Brian, at GormleyLawOffice.com, and Gormley is spelled GORMLEY. So Brian at GormleyLawOffice.com.
Okay, awesome, guys. So Brian at GormleyLawOffice.com. For those of you who didn't get all the full scoop, you definitely can go back onto the replay and get the amazing introduction that I did. I didn't sing to you guys this time, but I will next time. I promise I will before January is over. But definitely get in contact with Brian. He knows his stuff. He's awesome, super amazing. I'm not just saying that because he's sitting here in front of us. And any last words you have for the audience, Brian?
Make it a great new year.
All right, awesome. Thank you, guys. This is your girl Queen signing out, and I'll be back next week Thursday. Thank you.